Meanwhile, Gene Church is riding Harley Davidson, the last of the American motorcycle manufacturers. They've been in the business for more than 75 years now. And in the old days, 44 years ago, when racing started at Daytona on the beach, it was Harleys versus Indians. They raced 2.5 miles up the sand, hung a left, ran 2.5 miles back up the blacktop, called it road race.
In the realm of motorcycles and the manufacturers that make them, there is one prodigious step that overcoming it will surely grant them much reward, providing if they are able to participate. So let me explain. Imagine if Ford only produced the Crown Vic. That's the only car they make. The Crown Vic is a great car. There's nothing wrong with it. But if they decided they wanted to go road racing and participating in some of the highest level of Grand Prix, surely they will face some obstacles and would have to overcome it. Where would they start? How would they get there? Harley Davidson would be encroaching on a field where some may say they don't belong. We're here to find out. The Harley Davidson VR1000. The Harley Davidson VR1000 was a race bike and developed in the late 80s to early 1990s to take on the best in the world. Typically, you wouldn't associate an American motorcycle maker with performance machines to go up against the likes of Japan and the European manufacturers. But the VR1000 was an exception to this. With its 996cc 60-degree liquid-cooled V-twin with 4-valve per cylinder, Weber fuel injection, and peaking at 135 bhp at 10,000 rpm, those numbers are definitely not organic to Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson is known for their simple, air-cooled, pushrod V-twin motorcycles, mainly meant for cruising, touring, not really performance, especially at that time. The VR1000 was intended to begin a process of changing this perspective of turning Harley into a builder of technological advancement world-class motorcycles. And let's go ahead and just sit and admire this motorcycle. I think that this bike has aged gracefully. It is beautiful. In every angle that you're looking at it, it is a gorgeous motorcycle. And in a few minutes, I'll go ahead and give you guys a sound clip and you could listen to this thing. It's incredible. The story behind the development of the VR1000 is rather fascinating. The chassis and engine were developed by a slew of significant names, including Eric Buell, Cosworth, and Roush Industries. The plan was for Harley Davidson to compete in the AMA Superbike series against some of the best in the world, using a 100% American-developed V-twin designed and built in-house. This was a huge undertaking, considering how little Harley Davidson really knew about modern engines. I mean, up until then, their bikes probably had 2 valves per cylinder. I mean, shit, some of them still probably do. They didn't know much about a modern, liquid-cooled, overhead cam, timing chain, all that stuff. I mean, you only get that information and that experience after years and years of R&D. It doesn't just come overnight. To put it simply, Harley did not have any skin in the game at that point. The VR1000 featured an alloy perimeter frame with fully adjustable racing Olin forks up front, with a Penske monoshock in the rear. The swing arm was also alloy, and all of the bodywork was carbon fiber. Early prototypes of the VR1000 were created, and at then extremely over-square design with a 98mm bore with a 66mm stroke, giving 996cc. Isco pistons were used along with Carrillo rods in the initial design. They put the prototype engine on the dyno. They were able to get a power input of 140 horsepower at 10,800 RPM. But unfortunately, they cracked the crankcases at 8,000 RPM due to a bolt failure that proved to be inadequate for that output. It just teared itself apart. It was a start, but far more development was needed to make the VR engine reliable and competitive. One big concern was the lack of a 6-speed gearbox with no provisions to fit one. Also, the vibration levels were immense, without a counterbalancer, and the considerable weight of the power plant proved to be destructive to the cam drive. There was about 3 inches of unsupported crankshaft sticking out past the alternator to the drive of the primary cam chain. Resonance was setting at a high RPM and promptly destroyed the primary gear cam chain tensioners and snapping the chains themselves. 3 of these first generation engines were built for the dyno and initial chassis testing. A primary frequency counterbalancer gear driven at engine speed off the crankshaft was engineered. No mean feat, as it had to be compact enough to fit within the existing crankcases. A new 6-speed gearbox with a modern shift linkage was also developed. The primary cam drive was redesigned, using a bigger primary chain, inboard of the alternator to eliminate the resonance issues, enabling reliable performance up to their target of 11,000 RPM. Later, they would replace the primary chain altogether and instead opt for a 3-gear system. Their final engine design, they really nailed it. With the help of materials such as titanium, magnesium, and carbon fiber, they were able to shave off an enormous amount of weight. The final engines were actually 45 pounds lighter than the first prototypes. With the help of some of their Formula 1 contacts, they were able to get a new crankshaft and pistons. Not only were their pistons lighter, but they also produced more power. The valves grew in size and lost weight through the use of titanium. The fragile clutch of the early bikes was replaced with an AP Racing carbon slipper item that proved to be virtually indestructible. The racing versions of this model used a 6-piston AP Racing calipers along with an AP master cylinders. The homologation production of these bikes used a 6-piston Willwood brakes and lightweight Marchesini wheel. Every part of this motorcycle needed to be developed by scratch, meaning that there was nothing to base this bike on. Everything was made in-house and developed right here in the good old US of A. The development team had anticipated the first season of competition being in 1991. However, the VR1000 wasn't ready until 1994. That is a huge delay. So after Harley was able to get everything in order for them to compete in the 1994 AMA Superbike Championship, they needed a rider. So they had selected Miguel Duhamel, which was a 1993 AMA 600cc Supersport champion on Kawasaki. He led parts of the Mid-Ohio and the Braden Superbike finals, which were the only times the Harley VR1000 led an AMA Superbike race. So he was a champion. Harley's a big company, match made in heaven, right? Well, unfortunately, he only was able to lead parts of the Mid-Ohio race and the Braden Superbike finals, although the VR1000 was slightly down on power compared to its competitors. It handled exceptionally well and often made up that time in the twistier sections of the circuit and only would lose that advantage on the straights. And those were the only times that the Harley VR1000 led any superbike race. And sadly, by 2001, Harley Davison decided to cancel VR1000. Interestingly enough, the engine wouldn't die with the racing program. Instead, that was sent to Porsche in Germany. Before I continue here, I just want you to think of in recent times, a bike that Harley released that made headlines and shockwaves through the whole community. I'll wait. The V-Rod. When Harley sent that engine to Porsche, both Porsche and Harley were working on a modern street-legal engine. The fundamental dimensions, including the 60-degree architecture of the VR1000 engine, was kept, but the 1131cc Revolution engine was publicly shown in the summer of 2001 and shared no parts of the original VR unit. The Revolution engine was used in the V-Rod platform, and it was the most advanced production engine that Harley had ever used. And it allowed the Milwaukee firm to claim it was a race breed engine. It wouldn't be until 2019 that Harley Davidson would announce a series of all new models with liquid cooled dual overhead cams, fuel injection motorcycle engines, which we all know now is in the Pan America and the Sportster, and I think even now the Nightster. So like I mentioned before, with the homologation rules and regulations, you need to set aside a few units to sell to the public. Harley Davidson did sell the VR1000 to the public for $50,000. I think that I did notice one that went up for sale. Surviving examples of the Harley VR1000, so sought after by collectors, it's rare to see them on a track, with many having very low mileage as a result. Harley Davidsons can be, and probably are, one of the most collectible bikes. They have such a long history.
So we gotta remember, Harley has been around for a very long time. They played a big part in the early days of American motorcycle racing. With flat track racing, board track racing, I mean, they've been involved from the start here in America. If I could change one thing about this story, I would have loved it to see if maybe Harley would have just stuck it out for a few more years, and who knows what the possibilities could have been. Would Harley be the same Harley that we know today? Would they have a completely different lineup of bikes? Sport bike, naked bikes? Who's to know at this point, right? I personally feel like they spent a lot of money, a lot of resources, and they didn't reap any rewards whatsoever, which that sucks, sure, but I don't know, it just seemed kind of quick for them to just want to quit. But good on them. I mean, they didn't give up on that engine, which would later be on the V-Rod, which really nobody even liked. I mean, it sucks, honestly, because you want Harley to make a new bike, but then also there's the hardcore buyers that don't want them. The buyers are the ones that are buying the bikes, and the people that are making fun of them, we're not the ones buying them. But I digress. I do find it funny, and I think whoever created this program is a pure genius. A little known race of King of the Baggers, Harley's like, you know what, we're not going to get involved with the superbike races, the leader bikes. We're going to go ahead and make our own race with one competitor. That's going to give us a 50-50 chance of winning something. It's so Harley to do that. And regardless of the winning or losing or anything like that, I think the person that came up with this is a genius, because it has people like me, younger adult, that are now interested in baggers. I wanted a road glide for the longest time because of the King of the Baggers, and I will have one day. That's the crazy part of advertisement and marketing, and yeah, I'm not going to get too much into that, but yeah, so like I said, I wish they would have maybe gave it a little bit more time with their racing program, but unfortunately they didn't. So with that, my friends, stay up, 2 wheels down, peace.